available upfront, to order spares or whatever the case may be. So up until now, we had some challenges, but as we move forward, it's much better, and I'm quite pleased to see the progress and the improvement in, first of all, the readiness, and then secondly, the execution. Do we still have problems on both sides? Yes, we do. But as we execute, the reliability maintenance, it is improving, and that for me is positive. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Duncan McLeod from Tech Central wants to know, to what extent is Eskom able to negotiate with industrial customers regarding the anticipated high demand for electricity in the last week of May? I'm going to ask Isabel Fick from the System Operator's Office to answer that question, please. Isabel, please put on your camera as well.
Good morning, everybody. And yes, the answer is that we do have that capability. We have a demand response program, and it entails about 1,300 megawatts on any given day. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Colleagues, Isabel Fick works in the System Operator's Office as a General Manager there. The next question is from Justin Kennedy from RSA Current Affairs. We've heard that Eskom loses billions a year due to scrap metal theft. How does this affect Eskom's power generation capacity? Karen Pillay, please will you answer the security aspect of this and whether indeed it has any effect on generation capacity? You might want to make the distinction as well with distribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Sikanati. I'm hoping you can hear me clearly.
Correct.
Yes, just to respond to the impact of cable theft, indeed, this poses a major impact on our operations, particularly in terms of interruption of supply. We have noted in the recent past the involvement of scrap metal dealers, particularly in obtaining access to stolen copper cables. We have also noted that the demand for scrap and copper are drivers for an increase in incidents that actually affect our Eskom sites. In the recent past, we have been involved in apprehending specific scrap metal dealers who have, together with specific foot soldiers, targeted Eskom facilities, and these matters are currently before the court. Thank you, Sikanati.
Thank you, Karen. Karen Pillay is the acting group head of security. Thank you. Jan, I'm going to request you to get back to Hanno Labuschagne right now with the data on load shedding, the comparison between the first quarter of calendar 2021 and calendar 2022, please.
Thank you, Sikanati. Hanno, Isabel Fick, the system operator, sent me the information, which I will share with you. Since the 1st of January 2021 till the same time, we had 29 days of load shedding. So that was last year, 29 days of load shedding. 27 days were at stage 2 and 2 days were at stage 3. There's been also in the same period 21 days of load containment, 19 days at stages 1 and 2, and 2 days were at stage 3. But I believe the important one is there have been 29 days of load shedding last year. Now, the same time this year, there were 25. So it's a few days less of load shedding. 2 days were at stage 1, 17 at stage 2, 2 days at 3. But for me, the alarming one is 4 days at stage 4. So although we had less days for the same period this year than last year, unfortunately we had this time around this period in this financial calendar year, 4 days of stage 4 load shedding. Thanks, Sikanati.
Jan, do not go. I'm going to ask you to repeat that very slowly. And let's be clear, we are talking about the period between the 1st of January 2021 to the end of April 2022.
That's correct. So let me repeat. From the 1st of January 2021 up until the end of April 2021, we had 29 days of load shedding. So 29. 27 were at stage 2 and 2 days were at stage 3. Now, the same period this year, so from the 1st of January 2022 till the 30th of April 2022, there's been 25 days, so it's 4 less. However, 2 days were at stage 1, 17 days were at stage 2, 2 days were at stage 3, and 4 days at stage 4.
Jan, I thank you. That is clear enough. Do not go, because Richard Mack has a question for you. Jan, I hear you on the high demand, but at the moment we sit around the 30,000 megawatt level. That's available generation capacity, I presume. Back in 2010, 2011, we had demand at this time of year at 33,000 megawatts. Demand has dropped by over 10%, yet we still can't keep load shedding at bay, even with new build at Kusile, Medupi, and Ingula online. We are going backwards. The build was supposed to have opened up some breathing space to catch up on aging major plant maintenance. Clearly, this has not happened. It's really a comment, Jan. Andre, are you also able to weigh in here after Jan?
Okay, thanks, Huguenot. Thank you, Richard. The 30,000, as we have it currently, is correct. However, make no mistake, by the end of May, we do foresee a 33,000 megawatts. So we have to get ready and have to be ready to ensure that we have sufficient capacity, including obviously the reserves, to satisfy the demand of 33. So it's not that we only forecast currently that we're going to be on 30,000. So the 33 is a reality still this year for us. Now, your point on Medupi, Kusile, and Ingula, I will just stick to Medupi and Kusile. Yes, we all know that these two power stations were supposed to have been built, much earlier. So that's number one. Number two is, when the decision was made to build these power stations, there was not sufficient time to plan them and design them properly. So that we also need to make a peg in the ground. So we were basically going out on tender with information because of the time constraint, because the country was running out of capacity. That made it very, very difficult. So, but we went through it, and we did place those contracts for Medupi and Kusile. Now, as we sit here, yes, all 6 units of Medupi has been placed in commercial operation, around about 720 megawatts. Now, unfortunately, last year, it was the beginning of August, we scored an own goal, with the explosion at Medupi Unit 4. So we have 5 units, so you're 100% right. That was an own goal, unfortunately, and it was completely unplanned, and it was unnecessary, make no mistake. So that is minus 720 megawatts that we are living with currently, and the forecast currently is that in September 24, that unit will only be returned to service. So unfortunately, that's where we are. Now at Kusile, the 6 units, we've only put into commercial operation 3 of those. The 4th one has been synchronized, and it's contributing very well to the system. But units 5 and 6 still need to be, first of all, synchronized to the system, as well as to be placed in commercial operation. Now, over and above the fact that we have these 2 power stations, we're all aware that we had some major design latent defects that we are dealing with. And I believe this is due to the fact that we did not have sufficient time to plan it, to design it, and to place the contracts for the reasons that I've just given. So we are dealing with those defects. At Medupi, I'm pleased to say that the indications are that the modifications that we have implemented, that they are positive success that we are experiencing. Now, the same modifications are currently being rolled out at Kusile 1, 2, and 3, and obviously, and 4, sorry, and then 5 and 6, it will be implemented while we're doing the construction. So your point that we're going backwards, I believe that we have significant challenges, but we believe that the 33,000 megawatts that we do foresee at the end of May, we will try our utmost and endeavor to meet that demand. So I trust, this has been sufficiently answered based on your question. Andre, I don't know if you want to come in on anything else.
Jan, maybe the only thing to mention in addition is the addition of new technology with flue gas desulfurization at Kusile. It's the first of its kind on the African continent, and the introduction of this new technology has also caused us some operational challenges, which has further contributed to a delay, particularly on Kusile Unit 1, bringing that unit online. We are required by law to introduce similar technology at Medupi, and that could potentially increase the risk further because of the complex nature of this technology and the fact that you end up creating a single point of failure for a unit with that plant operating. Thanks, Jan. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Andre.
Thank you, colleagues. The only thing to add for me to that comprehensive response is 2010-2011 was exactly 11 years ago. And in that period, we have not added much more generation capacity while the power stations are 11 years older and on average now 43 years. I shall move on to Banele. I suppose this is Banele Kininza from independent newspapers. Head of the vulnerability that outages and load shedding bring from cable theft syndicates, which is costing about 2 billion rand in cable theft. Exactly what security and legislative efforts are being made to combat cable theft? Which agencies, especially state, is Eskom working on in the cable theft fight? What is the update on arrests? How much is cable theft contributing to the current efficiency challenges? Karen, please come back on and tell the people of South Africa about the collaboration that Eskom is having with Telkom, with Transnet, and with PRASA and other state agencies or state-owned companies on cable theft. You, of course, will not be able to answer the question about legislative efforts. That question needs to be directed elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Indeed, the problem of cable theft is a national crisis. We deem this also an impact on the economy of the country, and therefore we have joined hands, as mentioned, Sikonati, with the likes of Telkom, PRASA, as well as Transnet to join efforts in the scourge of crime. In so doing, we have also implemented integrated strategies. We're exploring different solutions to address this particular crime phenomenon. As we know, the effects are quite dire. At this point in time, we're also working very actively with our law enforcement agencies, and we're very grateful for the efforts being put in, although we know it is inadequate at this stage. And together with the National Prosecuting Authority, we're also focusing on investigating the organized elements of these crimes. As you know, in many instances, it is often the foot soldiers that are apprehended without really focusing on the total crime network. I think in addition to that, it is important to mention, Sikonati, in addressing this particular crime value chain, we've also engaged the likes of SARS to assist us, especially where the export market are concerned, and we have started to see the benefits of doing so. We will continue with our efforts as we drive this partnership together with these key role players that are integral in the fight against this particular scourge of crime that we're experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Let's add those agencies are Telkom, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Transnet, and I think the Infraco broadband. The next question comes from Herman Pretorius. With the winter demand profile having specific peak periods in the morning and in the evening, does this not provide opportunity to only have load shedding during these peak periods? Oh, there's an email that's obscuring my view. I apologize, colleague. I want to read that full question. I apologize. Let's repeat that. With the winter demand profile having specific peak periods in the morning and in the evening, does this not provide the opportunity to only have load shedding during these peak periods? Maybe stage 3, but only during the peak periods, that's in the morning and in the evening. Isabel, please help us out here. Why are you not implementing load shedding only during the peak period?
Hi. It depends on what happens on the system at the time. The system is extremely dynamic. You would have noticed that we often only implement during the nighttime. However, this time it is not possible because of the high number of units that are not available to us. So we are struggling to meet the demand during the daytime as well. But Herman, you are 100% correct. We do have a very distinct winter profile in terms of morning and evening peaks, and in summertime we have a more plateau type of profile, which means that we have more of a constant demand. So it is really a matter of what happens on the system at any specific time. As you know, the system is very dynamic, and therefore we have to do what happens at any stage. So in terms of stage 3, however, you would have also noted that stage 3 is also seldom implemented, and the reason for that is because, and you would have heard us say this often, that we do have a uncertainty on the network over a week period of around 4,000 megawatts, which would equate to a plus or a minus 2,000 megawatts, and that is the reason why most often you will find us implementing stage 2 as opposed to stage 3. I hope that answers the question. Thanks, Sekunati.
Indeed, it does. So, thank you. The next question comes from William Horn of Netwerk Verantwoord. Is Ms. Paula Gottlieb still in charge of the reliability maintenance program? Also, does Eskom believe the reliability maintenance program will still reach its goal within the next 2 years? Jan Oberholzer?
Thank you, Sekunati. William, yes, Paula is still heading up our reliability maintenance program within the generation business. And I believe she and the team is doing a real stunning job. So Paula, to you and the team, well done. And obviously supported by all the colleagues at the power stations. I believe, William, what is critical to understand is reliability maintenance is not a once-off. I think it's very important to understand that it seems that there may be a misunderstanding that people believe that if you have now done reliability maintenance for 2 years or 3 years or whatever the case may be, then that is it. It is not. You know, it's like your own vehicle. The manufacturer of your vehicle is giving you some guidance to say, if you want to use this vehicle optimally, this is at the intervals that you need to do a type A, B, C, whatever maintenance. Now, the units that we have in each and every power station is exactly the same. It means that you have to do maintenance again, a stage, a level 1 or 2 or 3, whatever the case may be, on a continuous basis up until this unit is coming to end of life. So reliability maintenance, just to make it clear, is not a once-off. It is an ongoing process which we will continue up until that specific unit is coming to end of life. Now, it all depends, you know, that what type of maintenance is required. And this is why I said earlier, if you do reliability maintenance, it is very important to make sure that you have a 24-month period leading up to opening the breaker, that you've done all the planning, you've got all the resources available, etc. Now, we trust that as we move forward with the reliability maintenance, that obviously the reliability and predictability of these units will improve. But we must never forget that we have a system, a generation system. We've got 15 power stations, of which 2 are relatively new. They're actually new, Medupi and Kusile. So if you take the other 13, on average, the age is 43 years old. You design and you operate a power station, for 50 years, you may decide to extend it. So these power stations are coming to end of life. And what is important to understand, that if you look at Eskom's 2035 strategy, in the next 8 to 9 years, we will retire about 10 gigawatts, 10,000 megawatts, and then another 5 years after that, another 12,000 gigawatts, because these power stations or the units have come to end of life. And this is why it's so critical that we get new capacity on the grid as soon as possible. So, and it can not only be energy, that is important to understand. So there has to be a combination between capacity and energy to fulfill, the needs of the demand of whatever the profile will be. So I trust that I have managed to deal with the question that it is an ongoing process. As we continue doing, the maintenance, it will improve the reliability and predictability, but we must never forget the fact that we have a system that is relatively old, some of these power stations, and been running in the red for the last 15 years. Also, don't forget that. Not having the luxury of taking them off to do proper maintenance, because of 2 specific reasons. One being the availability of capacity versus demand, and the second one also the issue of availability of funds. Thanks, William. Thanks, Sikonati.
Thank you, Jan Oberholzer. The next question again comes from Terence Creamer. In Eskom's view, what is the main reason for the delays to the signing of the PPAs, that's power purchase agreements, with the IPPs, independent power producers? As both the IPP office, in a note to bidders on the 28th of April, and the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, in a response to questions from lawmakers yesterday, attributed the delay to the lack of budget codes or Eskom's discomfort with the PPAs. Terence, Agnes and Jan made a significant effort to answer this question earlier. I would like to give Andre the opportunity to just give an overall view on the power purchase agreements and indeed on the risk mitigation program and where Eskom stands currently. Andre?
Thanks, Sikonati. Terence, there are 2 issues at play here. The first one is the issue around the budget quotes. I think Agnes has explained that at length, but let me just add that the budget quote is a very important binding contractual document. So if we provide a budget quote, it's a firm commitment to the IPP in question that we will be able to provide grid access at the price that is quoted. Now, this is not a simple process. There is design work that needs to be done. Agnes alluded to the fact that in some instances, the IPPs do not provide sufficient information for our engineers to complete their designs as quickly as the IPP would expect. So there are inefficiencies in the process from that perspective, and we can't willy-nilly give budget quotes based on inadequate information, because eventually we as an organization have to pick up the tab for that. We have added significant capacity to our grid access unit. We have had an extensive engagement with the team internally under the leadership of Monday Bala, and we have debottlenecked the process in order for us to be more responsive, bearing in mind that the Grid Access Unit historically handled very few applications on an annual basis. And we are now very comfortable that we will be able to provide those responses in time. And we are, in fact, working hard to even accelerate that even further. We have absolutely no incentive to delay the issuing of budget quotes. On the contrary, we want to enable the addition of new capacity to the grid. So we are trying very hard not to be the bottleneck in this process. And again, if anybody, any IPP has any concerns, please raise that. It is far better to engage directly with Eskom than to vent frustrations anonymously on social media. That doesn't help us to solve the problem. Tell us exactly what your issues are, and I can give you my own commitment and Jan's commitment to debottleneck whatever process delays that there might be. When it comes to the signing of power purchase agreements, it's very important from a fiduciary perspective that we as Eskom directors sign agreements that do not have undue risk to Eskom as an entity. We certainly have no aspiration to be declared delinquent directors for signing contracts that contain provisions that may be onerous in future years. And therefore, we do take a lot of care to ensure that when those PPAs are signed, that they meet the requirements of good corporate governance, and that we can hand on heart go to our shareholder and say that as a board we have done our duty towards the entity. In some instances, particularly where there are some controversial matters, these matters take some time to resolve. That's in the nature of things, and we really would like to make sure that these agreements, being of the 20 duration that they are, that they're done properly, and that we don't have any comebacks afterwards by signing these agreements with undue haste. And therefore, we do engage with the IPP office. I believe our relationship with them is good and very constructive. Bernard Magoro is giving a lot of good leadership at the IPP office. He understands Eskom very well, being an Eskom veteran. And therefore, I think, again, the delay that we face is not a delay of months in signing the PPAs. It's a delay in years during which, since 2014, no new capacity was added. And that's the real problem. That is why we now face a constraint. So I think it's important to place the so-called delays in context when compared to delays in the procurement process over many years. And again, I completely acknowledge the role that some of my predecessors played in delaying that procurement process for reasons that I think are becoming apparent from Judge Zondo's report. Thanks, Sekonati.
Andre, please do not go. Can I ask you to, again, in very simple and short English, answer that particular question about a deadline to sign these power purchase agreements that Terence alluded to earlier? Is there a deadline, and what is that deadline, please?
So there's a target date which we are working towards. I don't think it's particularly constructive to give that date in public. The agreements will be signed when the agreements are ready. We should be very careful to sign agreements in haste. I think Jan has indicated quite eloquently what happens if you sign agreements in haste and you start executing projects without doing adequate front-end loading. So let's take the time to do it right. We understand the frustration, understand that people want to see capacity on the grid. Again, no one would like to see capacity on the grid sooner than I would, because it would get me out of these particular media briefings on load shedding. So we are not trying to frustrate the process or delay the process, but we cannot jettison our fiduciary duty to the organization. But we are working very hard and we are making very good progress. So I really don't want to engage in a round of finger pointing. Let's rather concentrate on getting those agreements done and dusted as soon as possible so that we can get the capacity on the grid.
Thank you, Rita. Colleagues, the time is 11 o'clock. 8 minutes ago, we closed the chat for questions, but we do have the last question from Kyle Cohen again of News 24. Can Mr. Matebula or Mr. Oberholzer please elaborate on how many units at Tutuka Power Station have benefited from the reliability maintenance program, and what the exact issues are at the power station that remain difficult to resolve? While you answer that, Jan, I have one last question, which is on my cell phone. And that question comes from Amanda Watson of the Citizen newspaper. There's been little talk of sabotage. Have these incidents slowed down, or have there been arrests? And then you can also please update us, Jan, on the status of our emergency generation reserves. Thank you.
Thank you, Sikonati. If it's okay with you, what I'm going to do is just ask Rulani if you deal with a question on how many RMRs have we done at Tutuka and what the performance improvement have been, if applicable at all. I will then deal with the other issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. Yeah, at Tutuka, we have not seen the improvement we expect from the units at Tutuka. The single biggest challenge at Tutuka, besides all the other issues that they are experiencing, it's their cooling towers. Their cooling towers have been run to a point where they were no longer available, and that constrains their unit to run below the minimum that any generating unit is expected to run. We have since started refurbishing these cooling towers. The issue being that the cooling towers were previously done with these asbestos fills, which currently are no longer required in the country. So we have put a new type of fills on 2 of the cooling towers already. We are busy with a project for the other 4. This will unlock capacity. So each of a unit requires a tower to be available for it to be able to function. However, it's a common system with 3 units on 3 towers and 3 units on another 3 towers. So currently we have only done 2 out of 6, which will not give us the results that we're looking for as yet. Only after we have done at least another 2, then we can start seeing the benefit. But the single biggest challenge at Tutuka currently, besides all other issues that other stations are experiencing, is the cooling towers. They are the biggest bottleneck, and projects are underway to get those cooling towers back on load. Unfortunately, it's not something that we can do overnight. It takes a lot of time to get those cooling towers back online. Thanks.
Thanks, Rulani. Just to add a little bit on what Rulani said about Tutuka, it's, I believe, currently the poorest performing power station that we do have. As we speak, we've got 1 out of 6 units that is generating electrons, and only 429 megawatts out of a possible 600 megawatts. So we really have significant challenges at Tutuka, which we are dealing with. But there are other issues that we unfortunately have to deal with at Tutuka as well, that is not only system related. So I'll just leave it there for the time being. In terms of the emergency reserves, that was a question, I think it was Amanda. At Ankerlig, The diesel levels, as we speak, is approximately at 90%. So it may be 1% up and down, but it's approximately 90%. Exactly the same at Gorikwa. So we have received a vessel berthed late, I think it was over the weekend at Gorikwa. So we've managed now to transfer some of the volumes, and we do have quite a volume now off site as well. So we are looking much more healthier at both Gorikwa as well as Ankara down in the Cape. In terms of the dams, because of the load shedding that we have implemented, we managed, we didn't use our dams to generate any electricity overnight. So we managed to fill the levels at the upper dams of the pump storage, so that looks extremely healthy at this point in time. So the emergencies, as we speak, we don't know what's going to happen, but as we speak, very, very healthy. Thanks.
Thank you, colleagues. That really does indeed conclude this morning's media briefing. It's been 1 hour and 6 minutes of accountability. Andre, do you have any closing remarks? We really have had quite an extensive briefing today. I'd also like any indication of whether another media briefing is due tomorrow, should there be no significant changes from where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigonati. And thank you again to everybody for the questions, and also thank you to my colleagues for answering the questions with aplomb and honesty and transparency. That's what we aim for. We want to keep the nation updated. Should nothing change, then, Sigonati, I think we should not have a media briefing again tomorrow. But in the event that there are any changes to the outlook, either for the better or for the worse, then we will honour our commitment to keep the country informed as to the latest developments with regard to Eskom. If the situation remains as is, then we will issue a media release confirming that. So we will communicate in due course what the arrangements are for tomorrow. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your interest and your critical questions. We appreciate that, and I wish you a good day. Please use electricity sparingly. Your contribution does make a huge difference to our consumption, particularly between the hours of 5 and 7. Your support in keeping your major power guzzling equipment like pool pumps, geysers and so forth switched off really makes a big difference. So we really support and appreciate your cooperation in this regard. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
There you have it, the leadership of Eskom. In a few previous meetings, journalists had asked why the COO, Jan